to pay lawyers to represent people who couldn't afford their own lawyer. Really quite unusual, because you didn't have to do that in the United States in 1927. In fact, that wasn't the law in the United States until 1963. Has anybody read the book Gideon's Trumpet? It's probably in your school library. It's a good book, and I'm going to tell you the story of Clarence Gideon. It's a real short story, but I think it's important. Clarence Gideon was a homeless person, and he lived in the state of Florida. And, can you hold on to your question, please? He lived in the state of Florida, and he broke into a pool room, which is a place where you play billiards and pool and those kinds of games. And he broke into a cigarette machine. I don't know if they have cigarette machines anymore, but they used to sell cigarettes out of machines. And so he stole some cigarettes, and he stole some change, and he got caught. And he went before the judge, and the judge asked him, "How do you plead?" Clarence Gideon said, "Not guilty, I want a trial." And the judge said, "Fine, we'll give you a trial." Clarence said, "And I want a lawyer." The judge said, "Well, then pay for a lawyer." And Clarence Gideon said, "Well, I don't have enough money here to pay for a lawyer." The judge said, "Well, that's too bad. We're going to have a trial anyway." So they had a trial, and because Mr. Gideon didn't have a lawyer, the trial was pretty fast, and he wound up being convicted and sent to the state prison in Florida. And from the state prison, he sent a letter to the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C., and said, "I'm an American citizen, and the state put me in jail, and they've got fancy lawyers, and they're all been to law school, and I didn't have anybody, and it's not fair." And so that letter arrived in Washington, D.C., and the Supreme Court decided in the case of Gideon versus Wainwright in 1963 that each one of us is entitled to a lawyer, and if the state is trying to put us in jail and we can't afford our own lawyer, the state has to pay for our lawyer. And that became the law of the United States in 1963. Now here's your history test for the afternoon. It's the only test I'm going to give you. The Chief Justice of the United States in 1963, who decided the case of Clarence Gideon versus Wainwright, is the same man who helped create the Alameda County Public Defender's Office way back in 1927. It's a very famous name in California, so you should learn it. Does anybody know who that person was? Anybody? His name is Earl Warren. Earl Warren was the district attorney of Alameda County. He became the Attorney General of California, the Governor of California, and he ran for president in 1952, but he lost. Anybody know who won in 1952? It's a long time ago. President in 1952? Yes.
Richard Nixon?
No, even before that. Anybody? Yes? You got a guess? No, even before Johnson, yes?
Roosevelt?
Not quite. You've overshot. Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Oh!
Yeah, okay. So President Eisenhower was in Washington, and that's how Mr. Warren was sitting at home. And the phone rings, and the president says, "I need a Chief Justice. How'd you like to come to Washington?" And Mr. Warren said, "Well, that sounds very nice. Thank you." So that's how he was sitting in the big chair when the letter arrived from Clarence Gideon, so that his little idea from 1927 that helped create the Alameda County Public Defender's Office wound up creating public defender's offices all over the United States by 1963. So little ideas can become big ideas. And that's what the public defender does in our courtroom. So now we're going to talk about what the district attorney does. Please follow me.